Good morning. I hope you're all doing well. This is the last lesson of this week, and today we're going to be with the Cambridge Checkpoint book. Let's begin. Last lesson, we've dealt with the first half of Unit 7. In today's lesson, we're going to proceed and finish the other half. We will be covering 5 points. Then we will solve some important exercises. The topics that we're going to cover are, first we're going to start with spelling words. Then we're going to continue with the difference in using like and as to make comparisons. After that, we're going to have going over the usage of prepositions. Then we would have literary devices. We will find out other types. And finally, we're going to briefly talk about points of view. For our spelling today, we're going to have 16 words, and we will try the way they're written in addition to their meaning. So to start with the first one, it is the word cautious. A cautious person is not the one that likes adventures, always careful. Number two is decisive. A decisive thing is when you settle an issue, when you give a result. The word spontaneous. Spontaneous is something natural. Then we have the word sympathetic. Sympathetic is when you feel compassionate, when you feel or when you express sympathy. Then we have another adjective which is pessimistic. A pessimistic person is the one that finds the negative aspects of things. Then the word physiotherapist. A physiotherapist is a person who is trained to give treatment or healthcare by using other methods like exercises and massages. Then we would move on to another word which is hydrant. A hydrant is this object where you open it and the water comes from it, and it's also called faucet. Then we have the word receptionist. A receptionist is someone who works in a hotel or a company, and they usually receive the phone calls and all the inquiries of people. Then we have the word canyon. A canyon is a deep valley. Another new word which is hibernation. Hibernation is a state of, let's say, not active, being not active for usually for animals. They spend winter sometimes without moving because it's different climate for them. Then we have a word that it's easy and known, but people usually do mistakes in it, which is scissors. Scissors, the object that we cut things with. Then we have the word bulbous. A bulbous thing, an adjective again, it is taking the shape of a bulb. Then we have an animal, which is tortoise. A tortoise is simply a turtle with some differences. Then we have motionless. Motionless means simply without moving. Then we have squirrels, another type of animals. And finally, apologetic. Apologetic is having the, let's say, expression of being sorry or regretful. Here, we would be settling a confusion that frequently happens with people, which is the confusion of using like or as. So each one has its own rule that we're going to discuss here. In using like, a noun or pronoun should come after it. Remember, no verbs. So the example would be, I will be like my father. I cannot say I will be as my father because I have no verbs here. So I should use like. My father is not a verb, right? While for as, the sentence after as should contain a verb, not necessarily directly after as, but anything after the noun or pronoun after it. So the example, I will do as you say. Notice here that we have say, a verb. That's why we used as. And you will see in the exercise that we will solve after that, that it's very easy to learn. Here is the exercise in page 44 in your workbook. It's exercise number 3. I wanted to solve it with you to show you that it's really easy to differentiate between these two words, as and like. So to start with the first one, I don't know if it's the same creature we saw earlier, but it certainly looks dash it. Notice here we have it. What would the solution be in your opinion? I'll give you the answers by the end of it. The ancient building looked dash. It had been built in a medieval period. Notice again we have it had been built. So there are some verbs here, yes? For C, the goat and the hyena looked dash creatures from a nightmare. Creatures from a nightmare. No verbs. You should know the answer. Do exactly dash I have told you. Told you. Then, if you disobey, you will end up dash your brother. They followed meekly dash lambs. Of course, it's going to be like so. And the other sentence, the continuation of E, afraid that they might be changed into something dash their friend has been. So the answers for these will be the first one, like, second one, as if. By the way, as if is used like exactly like as, no difference. So you find out that had been built, all verbs here, so of course we should use as, not like. For C, the goat and the hyena looked like creatures from nightmare. 4 words, no verbs here. Then for D, the first blank is as and the second blank is like. And for E, first blank is like and the second is as. We will be talking about prepositions now. So we've talked about prepositions many times in our sessions. However, here we're going to cover them from a different angle, from what they do. So to start with the first one, they can show position. They can show the position of things. And before I start explaining, I would tell you that prepositions do many things. So there is variety of jobs for them, let's say. So let's start with the first one. They can show position. The book is on the table. Where's the preposition? Of course, it's on. It shows the position of the book on this table. Also, they can convey ideas. In conclusion, beyond all doubt. Here, you're not talking about any position. You're just conveying ideas. See? The prepositions here are in and beyond. Also, they can follow a verb when you say, I'm interested in literature. See? Also, that leads us to something that we learned already, which was phrasal verbs. You remember phrasal verbs? When we have a verb and a preposition after it directly, which give a different meaning, like turn on, or stand up, or sit down. All these words are phrasal verbs. The note here is that there is no clear rule for how prepositions work. So you should learn them individually. That's why they should be learned. So examples here to show that there is no rule. He got out of the car. But if you're talking about buses, things are different. You should say he got off the bus. So it's always better to learn phrases here. Since there are no rules, we're going to cover the ones that we could find some rules for them. So to differentiate, for example, between among and between, how would we know when to use among and when to use between? Well, there is a rule for this one. The preposition among is used in the case of choices involving more than two objects or persons, while for between, It's used in the case of choices involving two objects or persons. So if you have two only between me and you, while if there are more than two sides, more than two people, it should be among. We can say, the secret is between me and my brother. While if we have three people, for example, we would say it should stay among the three of us. And before we move on to solve some exercises, I would give you a picture that would show the difference between at, on, and in. I know that there are more other contexts that different things are used, but this is the general rule. When you use at, you use it for a specific time. If you're saying at 2:30, if you're saying that at night, these specific times are with at. While for on, it's used with days, it's used with other dates. For example, um, let's say the 4th of July. All these dates are used with on. While for in, it's less specific. It's used with some months, with years. It's always from specific to not that much specific, from at to in. You may have a look on this one, and there are many other situations while you can use prepositions. On page 89, exercise 8b, we have sentences with blanks, and we are supposed to choose the right prepositions or suitable prepositions for these blanks. Remember, this is not very strict here. It just shows that whenever if you choose a different, let's say, preposition, it would change the meaning. So to start with the first one, it depends on the context here. If I say, she didn't think she could finish the work in time. Why did I say in? Because we're giving it as available period allowed, a period of time allowed. While for the other one, she didn't think she could finish the work at time. In here, we mean that she couldn't believe this. For number two, by the way, I don't like scorpions. Or you can say, on the way, I saw a scorpion. If you're saying on the way, in this case, you're just saying I was traveling and on my way, I saw this scorpion. For three, I didn't think much of her, you can say, and you can say about her. For the fourth one, by the time they arrived, it was all over. If you say by, then we say when they came, on when they arrived. For the second one, at the time it didn't seem possible. Here it means then, at that time, it didn't seem possible. 5. I have something on my mind, which means it's worrying me. While for the other one, I have it in mind. Here, you're mentioning an intention here. Here in this exercise 8b and page 90, it's much less confusing. We are about to choose each between and among, and remember the rule, two people or two objects we would choose between, three and more we would choose among. So the first one, the wall is, the answer would be between because we have two things only, our garden and the neighbor's field. For 2, my mother told us to share the sweets among the three of us. See, three people, that's why it's among. Number 3, dash you and me, so between you and me, because we're two only. The teacher told the students that they could talk among themselves. Why? Because the students are not two, there are more than two. Last one, there is not much difference between the alternative suggestions, but I think there should be a vote among the club members. The club members are a lot, that's why we chose among, while for the first one, uh, two suggestions we have, that's why we chose between. Before, we had so many types of literary devices, like similes, metaphors, personifications, and many others. Here we're going to know three others. To start with the first one, it is onomatopoeia. Onomatopoeia are words that imitate the sound it represents. So if you have the sound of splash, for example, when water splashes, it's the same sound. For example, when a balloon is exploding, you would say bang, the same sound as the word. Here are more other examples like boom, yes, and for zap, when you get electric shock, for example. So many examples can be found for these onomatopoeic words. Lately, we studied something called alliteration. Alliteration was the repeating sounds of the beginning of the words, consonants. Well, here for assonance, we're going to be talking about not consonant sounds, but about vowels. So, the definition of assonance is the repetition of vowel sounds in words that are close together. Look at the example here. And so, all the night, the I, tide, I, lie. So, all of these words, the same vowels are used. For the other example here, the rain in Spain uh, falls mainly on the plain. See, same sound. When you say it, you will feel it directly. For the last type of literary devices that we're going to be discovering today is very simple one, repetition. From the name, repetition is a literary device that repeats the same words or phrases multiple times, many times, at least two, of course. So the example given here, I gaze upon the sky, I gaze at the clouds so high. See this? Gaze, gaze, or I. Repetition here is used. We will have another example. The example here is repeated multiple times. Even in the title, Oh Captain, my Captain, see? Captain in the same title. And if you go over this poem, you would find that the same phrase is also repeated in many other places. For the last topic of our lesson today, we're going to be explaining point of view. For point of view, you have three types: first person, second person, and third person point of view. To start with the first one, first person point of view, the pronouns that we use are I, my, we, our, me, and us. From the pronouns, you could understand that the narrator is speaking about himself or herself. So, the usage of pronouns would be like I was sad, I was nervous, I did this, I did that, we were not feeling well. See? Talking about ourselves here. While for second person, the pronouns are only you and your. The narrator is speaking to you, to the reader. So he's saying, you were sad and you felt nervous, but it's worthy to mention that this one is not common. It's very rarely used in literary works, in poems, and everything. First person and third person are more common. Moving on to third person point of view, it uses the pronouns he, she, it, they, his, her, and their, whatever refers to someone who is not here. Not me, not you. So the narrator watches the story, but it's not in it. He speaks about other characters, yes? And the examples for that would be he looked sad, he seemed nervous, he did that. All these examples can be applied here. That was all for today's lesson. If you have any questions in your mind, please don't hesitate asking them. Put them in the comments section and I would love to answer them. Before you go, You have one task, which is solving two exercises, 4A and 6A, pages 45 and 48 in your workbook. Thank you so much for watching and listening.